Show yourself. I'm not here for you. It won't be the last.
Hello and welcome back to another video. In today's video, I'm going to be giving you a comprehensive Yone guide. Now, after the recent nerfs, Yone has fallen out of popularity. However, with the correct augments, itemization, and positioning, I think this is still a very high tier comp. The reason the comp does so well is because it can cap out with legendaries such as Kai'Sa, Jace, and Yuumi, and it has a very strong stage 5 if you hit your Yone early. Note that I have not been forcing this comp because I think it's slightly more augment dependent and it's very difficult to play whilst double contested. However, in Challenger Elo, in the last 3 Yone games I've placed second every single time. This board cap's really high because it can utilize legendaries such as Jace, Kai'Sa, and Yuumi really well. It punishes weak boards during stage 5 because it's such a fast paced comp. If they haven't got a strong front line, then you can punish people who are either greeting their econ or failed their stage 5 pivot and win by about 6 to 7 units, which does a lot of damage during stage 5. It beats out store comps, which are usually waiting for things like Ascension because the comp kills so quickly, so usually it'll never make it to 15 seconds. And this comp can be varied quite a lot depending on your augments and itemization. This is primarily a 1 unit comp, so if anything happens to Yone early, you can take some pretty bad losses. You also need to have best in slot Yone 2-star on stage 5, or at least very close to. You can vary between a few different items, but you need to have quite a few of the best in slot choices. This comp is slightly augment dependent, as some of the augments make this comp a lot better, whereas if you don't have any augments that help the comp, then usually you're going to be playing for a top 4. It's a very expensive board to play. You need to be upgrading multiple 4 cost carries and ideally throwing in a few 5 costs, so at the end of the game you're going to need a lot of gold to roll down at stage 5. The main carry of this comp is Yone, and the main secondary carry is Fiora, which gives Yone his second challenger. The default is to run 4 challenger with this board, which will always be Camille plus either Quinn or Kai'Sa. Camille gives clockwork with Orianna, and then your default academy is going to be Leona, and then you throw in a Braum to give bodyguard as well as good CC. And the final unit that you throw in here can be a Vi early but later swapped out for Jace. This is because you get Enforcer as well as the fact that Jace offers a Last Whisper built into his kit. And when you find Yuumi, you can drop out Leona, and it's important that you make sure your Yuumi is always going onto your Yone, and Yuumi's priority will move her up to the left, so you want to position her down right of Yone, whether he's far left or far right. Positioning your Jace next to Yone is crucial as Jace lowers armor, so by having him next to Yone, Yone will kill things quicker and get faster resets. If you have a challenger spat, then you can drop Jace for Quinn and run 6 challenger. The default is to challenger spat your Orianna for a faster cast, also it can go to Braum. And depending on what units you hit, you could drop down to 4 challenger and run Jace plus Janna. You can position it like this so that Janna will knock away units from your Orianna and keep her safe. However, my preferred method of positioning is by putting everyone in the front row. This way Janna gets a faster cast, and if you're worried about Blitzcrank hooks, you can use Camille as she's basically a dummy unit just as bait, so that Orianna can always get her cast off and not get hooked in. Yone almost always needs Runins, this way he's not getting stuck on tanks and he's proccing his bonus attack speed from challenges. Last Whisper is really good as an offensive option, as this way you can shred through the tanks as well, and GA is your usual go-to defensive item. This is because Yone's Ghost will still go out whilst he's still in GA if he procs it before. Another alternative for Last Whisper is Giant Slayer. If the enemy teams are running a lot of bruisers instead of bodyguard, then your default should actually be Giant Slayer instead. Your other defensive options are QSS and BT. QSS is good if there's a lot of CC in the lobby, and I almost always would never recommend BT. This is because Yone already has built-in healing into his kit, so therefore it's much better to just go 3 offensive items. However, if you have to make a BT, then that's fine too. An alternative way of playing Yone is the stacking Yone, where you run Rage Blade. This is usually best if you already have weak spot, otherwise you always need to make sure that your Jace is next to him, as Yone is going to like damage with Rage Blade, however he will stack up tremendously. If you're running Rage Blade, you almost always want GA just to ensure that Yone lasts towards the end of the fight. He's constantly going to be stacking up his attack speed, so even when he goes into his GA status, his clone will be attacking. Runins isn't as important with this build because you're stalling, so you don't care as much if Yone is getting those immediate resets. However, Runins or Giant Slayer, either one is fine. And this build works better when you're running 4 Academy with an Academy spat. This is because Academy gives him stacking AP and AD, which synergizes well with the stacking attack speed. And do know that this build is harder to pull off, so I wouldn't recommend it as the default. IE and Deathblade are playable as your extra damage options, though I wouldn't recommend them. IE gets trumped by Brambles, and Deathblade isn't that valuable on Yone. IE is really good with Last Whisper, however. Any extra 80 items can be chucked on Fiora. This unit can use pretty much any item in the game. She's really good with 80 items, but she also works fine with AP items and defensive items. Usually when you're playing this game, you're going to be picking up a lot of bows and swords at carousels, so sometimes you'll just get extra ones and you just throw all those items on Fiora. And it's important to note that you almost never greed for Fiora items because she can utilize all of them really well, so it's better off to just slam what fits your board during your early and mid game and then put it on Fiora later. Kai'Sa is always your Morello holder if you can get a hand of her, but again, similar to Fiora, you never greed your Kai'Sa items just in case you don't hit, you're going to be playing down an item. Late game on Carousel, you can pick up items for her. She utilizes items like Shojin and Rageblade to get a faster cast quite well, otherwise you just want to throw on any extra AP items you have onto her. And remember that Fiora uses AD items better than Kai'Sa does, so especially when you have a Fiora 2, you never put your AD items on Kai'Sa. And if you're falling asleep, wake up now because this is what makes the comp actually good. It's the supporting items. Whoever is standing next to Yone really wants to have some supporting items. Your default is going to be Leona because she gives a shield, however late game it'll be Jace, and if you have a Yuumi, sometimes it'll just be Braum. If you have a Trap Claw, your Yone gets infinitely better in this comp. The reason is because Yone wants to get a kill and reset, increasing his DPS through the challenger bonus. Yone wants the fight to be over within the first 8 seconds. So if he gets stunned for even 1 second, that's the equivalent of another unit getting stunned for 3 whole seconds in a standard fight that would last 24 seconds. Redemption is another great option for keeping Yone alive, and Frozen Heart's pretty good for slowing down their frontline, especially if you're versing other frontline AD units. Also keep in mind that this can swap between Leona, Braum and Jace, just whoever's sitting next to him, and Zeke's is another good option, although never go for Zeke's if you still need to make your GA or other Yone offensive items. All your leftover defensive items can go on Braum. He can utilize pretty much any tank item in the game, so don't greed these items. And make sure that you have some form of anti-healing. Ideally it's going to be a Morello on your Kai'Sa, however you can get away with a Sunfire Cape on your frontline. Because I'm starting to make a lot more of these guide videos, I'm going to stop repeating myself when it comes to generally good augments, so anything that gives you econ or an item is obviously going to be good. However, anything that relates specifically to Yone I will talk about in this video. So if I didn't mention an augment, it's probably pretty obvious whether or not it fits with the Yone comp, and if it's generally just a good augment like I mentioned before the econ ones, then it's probably just fine as well. So starting off with the hearts, Academy Heart you can take, however it's really not that great because unlike Academy Spat where Fiora and Yone are going to be getting the Academy buff, Leona and Yuumi don't actually get much benefit from the stats anyway, so it's better off to just not take this augment if you have better options. Challenger Heart is fine because this way you have a lot more direction and it's a lot easier to play your stage 4, usually you're just playing around 6 Challenger. Getting the extra Warwick early is nice as well because then you can streak with a strong Samira. Clockwork Heart is good at all stages throughout the game. Late game, you're just dropping your Camille for your Quinn. This way you don't have to run Camille, as she's pretty much just a synergy bot. Enforcer Heart is also pretty good. It basically just means you're not running Chase or Vi late game. The very best augments to take are On Guard, Knife's Edge, and Stand United. On Guard CC is ridiculous for a silver augment, it gives so much value. Knife's Edge is really good because all your AD units are going to be in the front row and this makes your Yone a lot more powerful. Stand United is also really good because most of the time you're going to be running 4 Challenger and you're running a lot of legendaries so you can fit in a lot more traits, and the extra AD and AP across your board is very good also. Thrill and Celestial are good for a little bit of extra healing. Thrill's better early and late game they're about the same because we only really care about Yone and he's going to be getting most of the kills anyway. Weak Spot is okay. This doesn't mean that you don't have to go Last Whisper as the armor pen and ignoring armor actually stacks. The reason that this augment isn't that amazing is because usually we're going to be running Last Whisper and a Morello's anyway. However, it's still a decent augment to take regardless. Academy Crest is pretty good, you just chuck it on your Fiora or Kai'Sa. However, I don't like taking this early as it locks you into playing Academy, which is really strong early but then falls off really hard during stage 4 because you're probably not going to be playing Yone anyway. And obviously there's not much to talk about with the other 3, they're all just generally good. And as for the rest of the gold augments, if it gives you econ or is just generally good, then it's probably good here as well, but there's nothing else that specifically relates to Yone. Moving on to the Prismatic Souls, you can take Academy Crown late game and then just play 4 Academy. Bodyguard crown's pretty much good at all stages throughout the game. However, towards the very end, it's not actually that great because the way we play this comp is we actually want to kill things quickly, so the extra defense isn't that necessary, although it's still a fine option. Challenger crown is obviously good, you just run 6 challenger with it. Clockwork soul is by far the best if you get it late game. Early game it's not so good. And Enforcer soul is only really good towards the end of the game. You just run 4 Enforcer, which is really significant being able to lock up their carry. However, early game it's not that good because most of the time damage is going to be pretty evenly split. And of course all the silver augments that have a prismatic form will be good as well. All the econ ones are generally good as well. There's only 3 that I really wanted to talk about. So Knife's Edge, like I said, Knife's Edge Silver is good. Knife's Edge 3 is insane in this comp. If I get Knife's Edge 3 opener, I'm usually trying to force Yone every single time. Makeshift Armor is the complete opposite. Because we want our fights to end quickly, we don't really care about our other random units having armor, especially because our main carries are going to have items anyway. Windfall is an okay opener, it just gives you a bunch of gold and then you can play for the econ early. And as a last augment, it's okay as well, just if you need that extra gold to ensure that you can go level 8 and roll down. However, I never really take this augment during the mid game. Early game we're playing strongest board because we need to win streak and try and get to level 8 with as much gold and HP as possible. You want to pick up early game units that can utilize your Yone items because you want to be slamming every single Yone best in slot item whilst also slamming win streak items that don't burn through any of Yone's components. At carousel you want bow, sword, then glove. Because you're playing around offensive items early, it's important that you pick up the right carrier which can utilize these items. Ezreal is by far the best 1 cost that can utilize the items. This is because Ezreal with a bow and scrap value will usually generate an item which is helpful too, and besides all of the best in slot items are good on Ezreal as well. Usually with Ezreal you're just running something like this, which is just a standard innovator board plus 1 scrap, and if I high roll a Heimer early, then I'm almost always running Yordle's scrap innovator. This is a really strong opener, mainly just because you're getting a lot of money from the Yordles, whilst also being decently strong because of the synergies. And if you don't hit that Ezreal 2-star on stage 2, then usually you're just going to be playing for a Tristana, and you can play Yordles as well to generate some econ, but you don't always have to. 4th unit that you always throw in is a Blitzcrank. Blitzcrank gives bodyguard and scrap, which is really good in the early game whilst you're generating a lot of money. Remember that you can roll down at 6 if you have a Tristana pet, just to guarantee that you have a strong stage 3. And finally we have Trundle, which is another great early item holder. He's really good with GA and Runins. Last Wisp was okay as well. You need to make sure that you have a strong front line with him. You don't really care about backline at all. This is because Trundle scales really well and all he really needs is just that time. If you don't have a 2-star item holder at 3-1 or 3-2, you can level to 6 and roll down a little bit. This is because we never want to go to 50 gold with this comp, as we need to be pushing levels aggressively, and if you hold on to 50 gold, you're not going to get to level 8. After Wolves, you go 7 and roll down for an item holder. The best item holders are either Samira or Shaco, however you can use other units if you hit them. It's usually best to have a bodyguard frontline, this way it's going to be a lot easier to pivot afterwards, so if you hit your Leona 2-star here, that's really good, because then you're just going to be pivoting into Braum after stage 5. Most games you're just going to be running 4 challenges Samira with whatever upgraded frontline you can find. It doesn't really matter as long as it's 2-star. An ideal board might look something like this. However, if you've already upgraded your Warwick and you're running challenges, then hitting something like a Zac 2 and a Mundo 1 can stabilize you as well. It doesn't really matter what you're running as long as you have a decent item holder for Yone as well as an upgraded frontline. And if you hit Shaco instead of Samira, you're running Echo for your Sin and then ideally 2 Syndicate. Darius and Braum's ideal, but usually it's just going to be Darius and Zyra. Then again, you're just running whatever frontline you can find. If you're already running challenges early game and you 2-starred them, you can throw them in too. Remember that we're trying to conserve as much econ as possible so that we can go 8 whilst maintaining HP. And don't get too set on my suggestions. In this clip you can see I'm running a 4 bodyguard variant with a random Vi. The Vi just offers a little bit more extra frontline so that I don't have to roll down any more gold than I need to. The biggest mistake I see players make with this comp is trying to play Yone 1 during stage 4. Yone 1 is not stable, it's much better to try and get yourself an item holder. On either 4-6 or 5-1, you go 8 and roll down. You do it early if you can afford to, or if you think you're contested so that you need to roll down before the other person takes all of your units. The reason I like rolling down at 4-6 is because if I hit, I can save a lot more HP, as usually most people will greed their econ until stage 5-1, and also you get extra time because of the augment selection. Most of the time you're going to be playing similar augments, so you don't need that extra time to actually think about your augments. If you don't hit Yone 2 and you're running Samira carry, you can hold on to Samira during stage 5 until you hit. In this clip I was running Shaco carry, and because I'm pivoting my entire board, I kind of have to commit to dropping out the Shaco. However, if you really need to, you can even put your Yone items on Fiora too if you hit her first. However, in this clip, because I pair my Yone and I still have one more round after Raptors, I know that there's a good chance that I'll hit my Yone 2 star eventually. And as soon as stage 5 starts, you need to be sweating your Yone positioning. This is because Yone wants to be on the same side as either a squishy unit so that he can get a reset, or on the same side so that his clone can get sent out to the backline. The only time that you don't want to be same side as their carries is if you think that Yone has a chance of dying. If he has GA, this is usually not going to be the case. But as you can see here, my Yone is on the same side as Seraphine, so not only is the Runins proc going to be hitting her, but when he sends out his ulti, he'll usually go after her as well. And keep in mind, it is very risky putting your Yone on the same side as an Urgot with GA. This is because if GA procs on Urgot and he's still ulting, he can often kill Yone during his revival phase. The only reason that I go same side here is because he's running double Runins, so I think he lacks damage to kill the Yone, but you can see even with double Runins, he almost kills him. And the other reason that it's so important that you're same side is not just so that you can conserve more HP, but also so that you can dish out more damage. During stage 5, you take a lot of damage, especially for more unit losses, and because this is a fast-paced comp, if you can kill them quickly, usually you're going to have a lot of units alive, which means you'll be dishing out a lot of damage to people who are lazy with their positioning. If there's a unit near Kai'Sa, she'll ult to safety, so you can put her in a somewhat dangerous position such as second row like this, and this will ensure that her first cast brings her somewhere safe. This keeps her safe from sins and usually ensures that she'll get off at least 2 casts. You just need to be very careful because if you put her in the wrong spot, she can get hit by CC. If you get an early Yuumi and Janna 2-star, you can frontline her, and as long as she's surrounded by 2 units, she'll always get her cast off a lot quicker and she won't die. Alternatively, if you want to make sure that Orianna's altering the largest cluster of units, you can spread out your units so that it's always an enemy cast, which is usually favourable. And finally, a sneaky way to play this comp is with a Blitzcrank. Blitzcrank will usually pull in a dummy unit that the enemies leave in their corner. Because it's a dummy unit, it'll probably die very quickly. Yone gets the free kill reset, and then his challenger attack speed bonus gets doubled, so Yone dashes in to kill his next victim at much higher attack speed. And that is the end of the guide. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments below, and let me know what you guys think of the longer length guides. I try to pack in as much information to as short amount of time as possible, but there's just so much stuff that I wanted to talk about, and because I've been playing this comp since the start of the set, there's a lot of niche things that I wanted to throw in there as well. Thank you all so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe for more guides, and go check out my Twitch if you want to see more of me. As always, I look forward to seeing you guys in the next one.